budget. More like an I than an E. Budget. That's how much money you have, and you have to be able to keep within that budget, keep within that amount of money. Bankruptcy, something you don't want. This is where you can't pay your bills and you have to file or say that you're bankrupt. Make an application. It normally costs money. In the UK, I think it costs around £500 to go bankrupt. And so you no longer receive more and more interest on the loans or the credit that you can't pay. Okay, fixed income, that's what you got coming in every single month or week. And disposable income, this is generally what you have available that you can spend on anything you like. You know, alcohol, parties, clothes, whatever. Debt. We don't say the B, debit. We say debt. Okay, debt. That's when you owe money to somebody else. And generally, other than a mortgage, we say that we have X amount of debt, or if you have a mortgage and no other loans or no other payments, then you're debt free, apart from the mortgage. Okay, a loan, if you want to get a car loan, or if you want to start a business, you want to get out a loan, you go to your bank, or you go online, maybe you find a good offer. Tax, we all have to pay tax. Default, you cannot default. Default is when you miss one payment or many payments. You get a big X against your name in default. This is very bad. You can then go to a credit agency and hopefully you can catch up. Maybe you can pay what you owe and then maybe some fines on top of that. But you're always trying to get out of and avoid defaulting. Assets. These are the things that you have that are worth money. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's another house, maybe it's a garage. Assets. Often said versus liabilities. Liabilities are things that cost you money. So if you're living in your house, that's more likely to be a liability than an asset, is if you're renting out your house to somebody else. A car is often also a liability. Investment portfolio. It sounds rather pompous these days, but it's a way of putting all your investments into one place. And then maybe you'd get somebody to manage it for you, or if you're smart, you'll do it yourself. Because you remember, nobody cares more about your money than you. All right? Other people are making money off of you, whether you have a good investment or a bad investment. They're still making their money. But you is your money. So that's the smart thing to do. Look after your own money. You care about your money. Capital gains. This is where you get more money from something you sell. Maybe you get inheritance, or maybe you get given something that's worth a lot of money, maybe another property, or you've bought a property and then over the 5 years it's gone up and up and up in value. You'd have to pay capital gains when you sell that property again. But if you don't sell the property, you don't have to pay capital gains. So you want to think about putting in a trust before you die, so there's no inheritance tax and capital gains that your children would have to pay. Worth thinking about. Pensions. Pensions are talked about a lot in the UK. It's a very big subject and people are very passionate about it. Now, you can have different types of pensions. You can have just the government pension, which is very small. You know, we pay into it all our lives. Maybe the government manage it very well, maybe they don't. Now, in the UK, third-party pensions, third-party companies look after the pension with different names, and they're supposed to look after it for you. I don't know what strategies are in place to make sure they don't ruin it all. There was a case many years ago where the pensions all disappeared because of bad investments. I won't say the name of the company, but yes, pensions are a scary thing. It's a lot of money. So you can have the government pension. You can pay into a private pension, which is what my mother did, ready for her retirement. Alas, she did not make it to retirement. So my siblings and I, we were able to enjoy those rewards. And then a work pension. Now, work pensions have been pushed by the government to make everybody have a work pension. And that's kind of like a private pension. But the other type of work pension, now that's normally what we'd call something like an institutional pension. So if you work for, say, the NHS, the National Health Service, you would get a good pension. Whether you worked for the local government, your local council, you could get a good pension. Whether you work for the police or even the army, the military, you'd get a good pension. And often these work pensions, you can draw on them, take from them a lot earlier, like 50, 55 years old. So a company with a good work pension, like I said, NHS or the government, something like an institution, a big company, that is another benefit to working with this company. Private pensions, like I said, you pay into yourself. You can go with whoever you want. And the government pension is quite poor. It's very, very small. Okay, equity and collateral. Equity is like if you own your own house and maybe you had a mortgage on it, but over the years, maybe even a decade, it has a lot more value because the house prices have gone up. So now you have this equity in your house. You can sometimes release the equity through other companies, or you could sell the house, but don't forget about capital gains. All right, equity. Collateral. If you want a loan to maybe buy another house, you might put up your first house as collateral. The same if you want a loan, you can put something up as collateral. All right, council tax. Here in the UK, well, I'm not here, but in the UK, you have to pay council tax, and that is for the lights to be on, the street lights, and people to come around and empty your bin, and for the schools and the libraries, and all these services that you get to enjoy are paid with council tax. And this is normally on the size of your house. So if you have a small house, then you'd be in a lower band, and they consider it bands. Band A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So I think band A and B are small houses or flats, and then the bigger it gets, the more value your home is, the more council tax you have to pay. Utilities. So this is like gas, electric, water, sewage, these kind of things that you have to have, really, unless you're smart enough to live off of solar panels. Some countries don't have gas plumbed in, but like here in Albania, for example. Insurance. So we have to have insurance for our vehicle, for our car. And it's a good idea to have life insurance or accident insurance. Not everybody has this. Some people have none of it. But when you're paying for the insurance, you have to think about the excess. A different term in America that they use it. I can't remember the name. They use a different word, but it's the amount that you're willing to pay off first. So they give you a payout of, say, £1,000 for your car because you're in a bump. But you chose to have a high excess of, say, £500, and then they pay you the other 500. So maybe if you go 10 years without having a bump and you have high excess, then your premiums, your regular payments to the insurance will be a lot lower. So you can have premiums of, say, £300 a month for your car. But if you choose, say, a high excess, say 500, then you might only be paying 200 or 250 for your monthly insurance. All right, these here are more about bank related. These are more about banks. So credit score. Everybody has a credit score, and it's the number that the bank feels that you are of risk to pay it back. So if you have a very high credit score, then you're low risk. You're in the green. That's good. If you have a bad credit score because you've been unlucky in life and something's happened, then you'd have a very high number, sorry, a very low number, and you would be in the red. And this is no good if you want to get a loan for something, if you want to get a loan for a car because your job is in another town. And also for a mortgage, it's very, very hard to get a mortgage if you've got a bad credit score. And even some companies, agencies, if you want to rent an apartment they will check your credit score. And this could be very bad. So credit score is very, very important in the UK. Unless you're a millionaire, then it's not such a big deal. Okay, so as I said, mortgage, we don't say the T, mortgage. As you know, that's when you put a lump sum down and you basically have a loan from the bank to buy your house or your apartment, a mortgage. Rent is when you just pay a monthly amount, but you never owe it. You never own the property. But rent is generally lower price than a mortgage, depending on where you live. So it can be lower than a mortgage. And with rent, sometimes you get the bills included, the utilities included. Sometimes you don't. So you need to check first, especially for council tax. Very expensive. Overdrafts. This is when you have an agreement with the bank that it's okay that you go into extra money that's not yours. Below zero, you're going into their money for maybe 1 month or 2 months, whatever your agreement is. Maybe you have an overdraft facility of £500, and that's agreed because your accounts are have mixed dates for being up to date. But that needs to be an agreed. But again, there's a charge for that. If it's unagreed overdraft, you get higher charges, but often they'll still give you the money. Standing order, that's when maybe you have an agreement with, say, the utilities, that you pay the same amount every single month. Very similar to a direct debit. I didn't write this on there. Or DD for short. And there's a kind of like a promise with this direct debit. It's through a third party, and they promise that, you know, as long as you can pay it, they will pay it on to the other company. And there's some guidelines and safety and minimizing risk with a direct debit compared to a standing order. To be honest, I don't think there's a lot of difference, but a lot of companies will give you a direct debit form for you to fill out, and they will just take the money out of your bank, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. All right, moving up here, current account. That's normally your standard bank account where all your money goes in or your money goes out. Debit card. There's a big difference here between debit card and credit card. So a debit card is your money, taking your money out of the bank, all right, which doesn't normally cost you anything. Depending on where you take it from. If you take it out of the bank or the post office, shouldn't cost you anything. If you take it out from another bank's ATM machine, then you may get charged. You might be at a destination, a tourist destination, or you may be at a fun fair or a market, and there's an ATM machine, automated teller machine, or cash point, as we call it. And they may charge you like £2 or £3, sometimes even £5. Now, I'm taking my money out from the UK here in Albania, and it's costing me €7. So again, you got to think about the exchange rate as well whilst you're doing this. So current account, your general account. Debit card, your money. Credit card, the bank's money. Now they charge a percentage of interest. Now I put 3 there, but generally it's a lot higher than 3. If you had lots of money in the bank, maybe you agreed to a very low interest rate. But credit cards, somebody else's money. Good for building up your credit score, but you want to make sure you pay it off at the end of every term, every cycle, every statement. If you pay it off at before the end of the month, before the bill is due, then you can keep your credit score good. It shows that you've borrowed money, you're responsible, and you've paid it back. So credit cards have a bit of a love-hate relationship. You know, some people hate them, some people love them. Credit card, debit cards. Overdrafts I've mentioned, standing order I mentioned. Well, that's about it. If you have any other questions, just send a message and ask. See you next time.